Hello, my dear students. This is Mr. George Romani. Today, I'm going to explain chapter 17 in our novel, A Tale of Two Cities. I'd like you to listen to the explanation very well, and let's start now. Chapter 17 starts with some information about Mr. Lorry. Chapter 17 is titled Mr. Lorry in Paris. In this chapter, we get to know that in number 1, the first main point, Lucy Manette and Dr. Manette came to Paris and surprised Mr. Lorry in his office in Tellyson's Bank in Paris. As we know that Mr. Lorry had been in Paris as he was trying to save the documents and papers there and bring them back to London. He was working hard in his office in Tellyson's Bank, and suddenly he was surprised to see Lucy Manette and Dr. Manette entering his office in Tellyson's Bank in Paris. Of course, he was surprised to see them, but asked them what happened. Let's go to main point number 2. Lucy told Mr. Lorry that her husband, Charles Dernay, was arrested and he was imprisoned in the prison of La Force. And of course, this what made Lucy and her father, little Lucy and Miss Pross, come to Paris. Mr. Lorry, of course, was surprised to hear this. He was surprised to hear this news. And so, Mr. Lorry asked her, "So, why did you come to Paris?" Of course, Lucy and her father came to Paris just to save her husband. While they were talking, there was some sound coming from outside the bank. Mr. Lorry wanted to see what was going on there, and also Dr. Manette. Actually, Mr. Lorry knew what was there outside the bank in the courtyard, and asked Dr. Manette not to look through the window. What was there outside the bank? Let's go to main point number 3. Outside the bank in the courtyard, there were about 40 or 50 people sharpening their knives and swords on a big stone in the courtyard in front of the bank. The faces of these men and women were wild and violent and marked with blood. They were murdering the prisoners. Actually, in this scene, Dr. Manette was surprised to see this, and Mr. Lorry knew that this was a very violent scene. It was a horrible scene to see 40 or 50 people sharpening their knives and swords on a big stone for sharpening the knives. What were these people doing? Actually, those people were killing the prisoners. Those prisoners were noble people. Okay? And so, those people were sharpening their knives in order to kill those prisoners or those noble people. Actually, it wasn't only men. There were also women sharpening their knives to kill more and more noble people. Of course, it's a horrible scene. The people of France became so violent. And so Mr. Lorry was so afraid of the people of France at that time, because they were ordinary men and women who were doing this. Ordinary people killing, and their faces were marked with blood. And so Mr. Lorry asked Dr. Manette to ask their help. In fact, Dr. Manette came to Mr. Lorry to ask his help to save Charles Darnay from La Force. But Mr. Lorry told or answered Dr. Manette that he couldn't do anything. And after a deep thought, Mr. Lorry advised Dr. Manette, and that's what we are going to read in main point number 4. Mr. Lorry advised Dr. Manette to use his history and the power as a former Bastille prisoner. Former here means ex-Bastille prisoner, a prisoner who had been in the Bastille in the past, and ask those people's help to set Darnay free from La Force. I'd like to explain this point, saying that Mr. Lorry, whom Dr. Manette had come to ask his advice, said to Dr. Manette that he can't help him, but he himself, Dr. Manette, can use his history and power as a former Bastille prisoner to ask those people for help. How? Of course, Dr. Manette was known as a Bastille prisoner. Mr. Lorry said to him, "You can go, Dr. Manette, to the people in the courtyard, those violent people sharpening their knives, and you can introduce yourself to them, telling them that you are Dr. Manette, who had spent 18 years in the Bastille, and of course they will help you. They will consider you as a national hero." Of course, Dr. Manette listened to Mr. Lorry's advice, and he went directly to the people and introduced himself to them. The people were in a state of celebration. They were celebrating the event of killing the prisoners. And so they wanted to have fun. They were still in the state of the revolution. What was the reaction? Let's read main point number 5, and we will know the reaction of those people. In number 5, the people agreed to help Dr. Manette, to help him, and started to shout in the streets, "Long live the Bastille prisoner!" Who is the Bastille prisoner? Dr. Manette. Help for his friend in La Force. Who is his friend? Charles Darnay. Save the prisoner Evremond in La Force. So from main point number 5, we can get to understand that Dr. Manette was able to convince those people to help him to set Darnay free from La Force. Okay? Now, Dr. Manette was taken by the people to La Force, and he went there to set Darnay free. And he left Lucy, little Lucy and Miss Pross with Mr. Lorry. But Dr. Manette didn't come back. What will Lucy do? Or what can she do in this situation? Where is she going to sleep? With her daughter and Miss Pross. And here we could see that Mr. Lorry decided not to leave Lucy stay in the bank property or inside Tellyson's bank in Paris. Why? Because she was the wife of an immigrant, and so she could get a lot of troubles or problems to the bank. So Mr. Lorry, according to his duty to Tellson's Bank, asked Lucy Manette to stay in some rooms beside the bank. And he asked Jerry Cruncher to be with her, to take care of her and her family, and to get her anything she needs. Let's read this in main point number 6. Lucy, little Lucy, and Miss Pross had to be taken to some rooms beside Tellson's Bank because Mr. Lorry saw that as the wife of an immigrant, Lucy shouldn't stay in the bank property. Also, Mr. Lorry left Jerry Cruncher with them to take care of them. In the next main point, I'm sorry, it's not number 1, it's main point number 7. We could see that Dr. Manette wasn't able to return back immediately. So he sent Devarge with a letter to Mr. Lorry, telling him that Charles was safe. But he, Dr. Manette, couldn't leave that place yet, saying in his letter, Charles is safe, but I cannot leave this place yet. When Dr. Manette went to set Charles René free, what happened? They asked Dr. Manette, as we will later know, that he should be a doctor responsible for 3 prisons, including La Force. So Dr. Manette wasn't able to return back to his daughter immediately. And so he sent Devarge with a letter to Mr. Lorry, telling him that Charles was safe, but he, Dr. Manette, wasn't able to leave the prisons yet. He was working at that time as a doctor for 3 prisons, including La Force. Dr. Manette, of course, was considered by the people as a national hero. Also, when Mr. Lorry read the letter of Dr. Manette told Mr. Lorry in his letter that Monsieur Devarge had got another letter to Lucy sent to her by her husband, and he asked Mr. Lorry to let Mr. Lorry to let Monsieur Devarge meet Lucy. Let's see this in the next main point. In another letter sent with Devarge, Darnay asked Lucy to be brave and told her to take courage, and that her father had a great influence on the patriots around him. Here, Devarge came out of the bank with Mr. Lorry. Let me explain this. Mr. Lorry and Devarge, when they came out of the bank, Mr. Lorry was surprised to see 2 women outside the bank waiting for them. Actually, those 2 women were Madame Devarge and another woman called the Revenge. She was Madame Devarge's friend. She was Madame Devarge's friend. Actually, those 2 people came with Monsieur Devarge in order to visit Lucy, as we can see in main point here, number 7. Monsieur Devarge, his wife, and the Revenge went to visit Lucy in order to recognize her. Okay? In fact, Monsieur Devarge got with him his wife and that woman called the Revenge to meet Lucy Manette and to recognize her. Mr. Lorry was surprised to see them, but more or less he had to take them to Lucy. And all of them, all the four figures, went to Lucy Manette at home, and Madame Devarge gave Lucy the letter. And inside the letter, we could see that Darnay asked Lucy to be brave and to take courage, and told her that her father had great influence on the patriots around him. And so, as we see here, Monsieur Devarge was able to take his wife and her friend, the Revenge, to Lucy's house. Madame Devarge and the Revenge just came to Lucy's house to recognize her in order to kill her someday. Why? Because we should remember that the Jacks had taken a decision in the past to destroy the family of the Evremont, and by this they came to know Lucy in order to kill her. Madame Devarge and the Revenge gave Lucy the letter, and Lucy read it, and Lucy kissed Madame Devarge's hands. Can we imagine this? Lucy was so kind and so thankful to Madame Devarge that she kissed her hand. And Madame Devarge looked at her coldly. She didn't come to give her the letter. Actually, she came with her friend, the Revenge, just to see Madame Devarge. To see Miss Lucy Manette, in order to recognize her and her daughter. Also, Madame Devarge asked to see little Lucy, because little Lucy should be killed also after the revolution. Madame Devarge and the Revenge said that they wanted to see Lucy and little Lucy because they would help them if they found them in the streets of Paris, in case they needed help. But actually they said so, but they were lying. They actually came to recognize Lucy and little Lucy, just to kill them after the revolution. Madame Devarge saw Lucy and little Lucy. She and Madame Devarge and the Revenge knew them very well, and Lucy felt something very strange. She felt that the shadow of Madame Devarge felt on her. What's meant by this? I mean by this that according to literature, this means that Madame Devarge wanted to harm Lucy and her family. Lucy felt that, and after Madame Devarge and Monsieur Devarge and the Revenge had left, Lucy said that to Mr. Lorry, that she was afraid of Madame Devarge and that she felt that her shadow had fallen over Lucy. But Monsieur Devarge, Mr. Lorry, who saw this action, didn't want to make Lucy feel worried. He told her that everything was okay and she shouldn't feel like that at all. And after that, Lucy was happy, of course, to know that her husband was okay. And Miss Pross, Monsieur Devarge and the Revenge, all of them went away. And that's the end of the events of chapter 17. I wish you had understood it very well. Any questions could be given to me later, or by any kind, or by any way, or in class, as you like. Okay? Best wishes. Thank you very much, Mr. George Romani. Thank you.